The apartment building Officer K lives in isn't in the best shape, overcrowded and cramped, but the apartment itself that he inhabits seems quite clean, tidy. The readout for his water toxicity levels in the shower is disconcerting because, despite being so seemingly privileged, being a police officer, the best he can get is still just
99.9% detoxified water.
This is an unsettling feeling in that subtle way only Cyberpunk tends to deliver for me. It calls our attention to something we take for granted, clean running water, and says, hey, this thing we need? It's not gonna be there forever if we're irresponsible with our world. Is this simply how ruined this world has become, that even the ones highest on the social hierarchy can only get water that probably won't kill you immediately? Is it worse for people who are worse off, less privileged? I'm inclined to say yes, and that's even more frightening. Before mentioning that K isn't the highest up on the ladder, we'll talk about Neander Wallace later, I want to point out an interesting dynamic. Despite being a police officer, high privilege, K is also a replicant, literally a manufactured slave, forced to be complicit in the oppression of his own kind. It's a tough situation to be in because he is two extremes of something not terribly popular. If his job as a cop, which he is manufactured and forced to carry out, isn't enough to get him hated, what he is as a being almost certainly is.
Fuck off, skin job.
Sentimental skin job.
Contrasted against someone like Neander Wallace, a man so powerful he considers himself a god, who may not be liked but is certainly respected by virtue of his immense power, K is neither liked nor is he respected. The intersection of his identities as a tool of oppression and victim of oppression is excruciating because it nets him warmth and reverence from nowhere. It is something he lacks access to completely, except by paying for it, with money that will only go into the pockets of his uncaring creator, the same person who put him in this awful situation to begin with. Like K, a physical creation developed to perform whatever tasks his human masters deem necessary, with complete disregard to his lived experience, Neander Wallace has another creation, joy. Joy is someone, to Wallace something, else to profit from, exploiting people's psychological and emotional needs while completely ignoring her own. After all, replicants don't have souls, right? They're just machines. Joy can't have any emotions or desires of her own, she's merely a program. Why bother treating these beings as sentient or feeling in any way? They're just here to serve our needs and nothing else. Physical enforcement, emotional placation. Those are their functions and everything else is irrelevant. Disregard any semblance of humanity in them. Just a machine and a cluster of code. It's the easiest and most natural thing to do, right? So with those character overviews out of the way for now, let's go back to Neander Wallace, someone who undoubtedly has many replicants like K engineered, and many Joys and Joes released and installed in consumer homes and emanators. I mentioned earlier that he fancies himself a god. How is Wallace's power, privilege, and disregard for anything beneath him reflected in his lifestyle, the way he uses resources that others lack, like water? Before getting back to water, I want to take a short moment to talk about wood, and connect it to the rest of all this. Wood, as we can see when K takes the wooden horse to the black market, is inconceivably scarce. So scarce that it would make him rich, comparative to selling a diamond in today's world. It's understandable that wood would be scarce, because clean water is scarce enough that even humans face challenges in getting it, and wood needs clean water in order to grow. Lots of it, in fact. And in a world where its very people struggle to get clean water, they simply can't afford wasting it on wood anymore. Synthetic wood replaces real wood for the most part, just like harvested palm weevil larvae, or sago worms, ground into protein masses, replace the various foods that this world can no longer produce, also likely for lack of water. So what's Wallace's relation with wood like? That's right, he's got a whole box of it to store his observation drones inside. While the film never actually lets us see the difference between genuine and synthetic wood, I don't think it's a stretch to claim that box in Love's hands is very, very much real wood. Wallace is certainly wealthy enough to afford it. He is not jumping to sell it anytime soon, given its ritualistic nature, so okay, he's a person who has. But wood is just another scarcity caused by a lack of water. So, bringing it back, what's Wallace's relation to water then? He has so much of it that he expends it for decoration and atmosphere. There are people out there who struggle to get water that won't kill them, and while Kay's water privileges aren't flawless, it's safe to say others in this world have it much, much worse. And Neander Wallace just uses it to fill a damn room with, or refract light in a hallway. And he never addresses it, never looks at it, never has any dialogue or on-screen actions to show he even notices it. Water, liquid life, is merely background for the most powerful entity on this world. In his surroundings, Wallace controls water, and he has control of water. Control that those below him sorely lack and could really use. Fancying himself a god is par for the course for someone who seems to have such absolute will over the elements around him, but humans will always fancy themselves greater than they really are, and Wallace is no different. Nature can never truly be controlled. Water takes more effort to wrangle and wrest into the positions humanity needs in this world than it has ever taken before. If Kay's shower and Wallace's decorations are an example of this on a micro level, the Sepulveda seawall is an example on a massive scale. In both cases, we struggle to harness water, in one to help us live, in another to prevent it from killing us. It's this idea that you just can't control something so easily that comes up so strongly in Blade Runner 2049, as symbolized by water and humanity's relation to it. In the final battle between Kay and Love, there is another battle happening, that of Kay, Love, and Deckard, these humanoid characters, versus the natural force of the seas, against which they are nearly powerless and fearful of. Where water sets Wallace apart from his fellow people, its torrents equalize these characters. Replicant, human, robot, soul, what does it matter? If the waves take them, they'll all meet the same fate, same as anyone else. Water plays the role of an equalizer in one more moment, possibly one of the most important moments for the development of what I feel is this story's emotional center, joy. Joy and Kay are as different from each other as replicants are from humans at first glance, but this never truly stops them from trying to relate to each other. Despite both being definitively artificial, their treatment of each other as real beings, in that sad, knowing way that is aware they're really not, is what ultimately lets them transcend their status as tools of the corporation and rise into people with their own wishes and understandings. Rain is the water that makes Kay and Joy equal and able to truly touch each other for the first time. Until this point in her life, everything Joy has known has been man-made, artificial. She's not yet witnessed or experienced the beauty and indomitable nature of, well, nature. Up until now, everything she's known has been made by the same people who made her. The rain that falls over both Kay and Joy, giving them a kind of shared reality that isn't made of artifice but simply exists, may not be terribly clean. This is a cyberpunk dystopia after all, but symbolically, after the waters wash over them, the two are able to look at each other for the first time and truly see each other clearly, accepting who's in front of them, both of them awed, made small, made equal by nature's presence overshadowing their own. Water is a powerful symbol in Blade Runner 2049, and the story uses it to communicate several powerful ideas without speaking a single word. I encourage you to re-watch the scenes that feature water prominently. You might notice a few things of your own. I didn't include everything in here as it was getting long enough, but keep an eye out. Water can give us life and kill us, and when replicants dream, the tall white fountains that play in their memories are just a trace of the reality their eyes all inevitably open to.